I fell in love with the concept of something that's not visible by the naked eye, and the amazing ability of that collectively to create so much of financial value.
Our guest for today's episode is Deepak Maharaj, the executive cluster head at BioCiTi, an expert bioprocess engineer and MBA graduate with over 20 years experience within research and development. Deepak has over 25 years experience in the biotech space and is very passionate about assisting entrepreneurs bring their scientific concepts to a commercial reality. There's also a special announcement at the end of the episode, which is the first of its kind in Africa. So make sure you watch the whole episode. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another amazing episode of the Citizens Podcast. We have an amazing guest for you today. His name is Deepak Maharaj. Deepak, how are you doing, man?
I'm great, David, and yourself?
I'm amazing. I feel great. I'm honored to have you. I think we're going to be educated today. Just to prepare you. Yeah. I'm going to ask you a lot of funny questions. Some might sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. It's because I don't. So I expect you to, maybe break this information down for me in sizable and, digestible bits. And I think we should start with you introducing yourself to our guests so they can know who you are, where were you raised, and why do you do what you do?
So I was born in Chatsworth in Durban, KZN, and studied at which is now UKZN. It was UDW back in the day, University of Durban Westville. Yeah. So I started doing my majors were actually botany and zoology, study of plants and study of animals, and didn't complete, but started working at a company called AECI Bioproducts. And that was where my love for biotechnology was born. I started at that company as a lab assistant, essentially, washing glassware and cleaning up the lab. But I fell in love with the concept of something that's not visible by the naked eye, and the amazing ability of that collectively to create so much of financial value. And so I worked and progressed up the ranks to eventually as a production technician, and then moved on to CSR, where I actually moved from Durban, sunny, humid city, to a place in the Northern Cape called Uppington. It was a complete change of environment. Took me by surprise, but
very hot,
extremely hot,
I know.
but dry heat, so different.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot. I was essentially thrown in the deep end to manage a facility that it was a pilot plant that we were using to develop a process for the production of beta carotene. So just to put it in perspective, beta carotene is an antioxidant. It's provitamin A. It's the stuff that gives carrots its orange color.
Oh.
Okay. So in algae produce it as a natural sunscreen, so to say. And that was why it was in Uppington, because of the high solar radiation in that region and the long daylight hours. Makes sense. So yeah, I was based there for a year till we developed that process, and then I moved to Gauteng, where I continued my career at CSR, and eventually worked there for almost 16 years. And then while I was, towards the end of that stint, I was made an offer by a company called Biotech to lead their biometallurgy group. And I was there based at Biotech for 3 years. Biotech is in Randburg in Gauteng. And during that 3-year period, I was doing my MBA. And I realized that my passion was around business where business and science meet. And on the back of that, I decided to take a 3-month sabbatical. I left. I completed the MBA and then started up my own consultancy company in science, engineering, and technology, which to a certain extent just still continues in the background. But and then in June, I was made the offer at BioCiTi, and it just resonated with me because what BioCiTi is doing is just aligns with with what I believe in personally. The reality is South Africa has a huge unemployment issue, and the only way to turn that around is to support new businesses that are going to create their jobs, and that's where my alignment with BioCiTi works. And I've worked in the biotech space for 25 years, and to develop this emerging bioeconomy is something that I've taken as a personal goal, and being at the helm of BioCiTi allows me to make real impact in that.
That's amazing. Wow, quite a journey, man. Thank you for that. And at BioCiTi, you are the executive cluster head. For those who don't know what a cluster head is, I'm one of them. What are some of the duties of a cluster head, executive cluster head in this case?
So essentially, the executive cluster head, and it's called that for a specific reason, because we're trying to create a clustering effect. So we want to create a cluster around biotech activity, and the reason for that is that the more we have built around this cluster, the easier it is for businesses to navigate any barriers to entry into the industry of bioeconomy. So it's built around a very intelligent business mind called Michael Porter. And
I know the Michael Porter theory.
Yeah. So it's built around the clustering theory.
Okay.
And the Michael Porter's cluster theory is actually a response to Michael Porter's 5 forces. So the 5 forces are essentially what business need to navigate to be able to succeed, especially in a startup phase.
Yeah.
But now the clustering theory actually helps create clusters that makes it easier to navigate the Porter's 5 forces. So as a cluster head, it's my duty to, one, support the businesses within that cluster, expand that cluster, create more bargaining power through this clustering effect, provide the necessary tools and infrastructure to enable these businesses to be able to navigate all the steps throughout a journey of a startup. And in the biotech space, because it's an emerging area, there's a lot to be learnt. There's hurdles that people or businesses are going to face that you probably don't even realize is a hurdle as yet. So having that clustering effect helps them navigate it and leverage off the learnings of all the businesses that's in that cluster. I hope that sheds some light on it.
Yeah, it does, and I feel like that's the core of why BioCiTi exists. So, what does BioCiTi really do? And I'd like to understand exactly what do you do. You exist as an incubator, and the entrepreneurs or startups that have these scientific ideas or concepts, and BioCiTi brings them in. Can you just break it down? How do you do it, and how do these entrepreneurs access BioCiTi, and what kind of support is given around these ideas, and why?
Okay. So yes, BioCiTi is an incubator, but I'm always reluctant to just label us as an incubator only. I rather say BioCiTi is an ecosystem enabler. Okay. So the mechanism in which we enable the biotech or the bioeconomy sector is through providing support to allow these businesses to transition their concepts, whether it's early stage or more later stage, into the marketplace. So I'll give you an example, is that typically a biotech idea is born in the lab of some university professor or some master's or PhD student. So those, I call them science entrepreneurs, have a brilliant set of scientific skills, but to get a scientific concept to the market, it requires multiple skill sets. Okay? And those multiple skill sets include other aspects of science, engineering and technology, but also business. So because it's a very niche area in biotechnology, these scientists will be, as I say, very skilled in a particular area of science, but they need, for example, to scale a process from what we call petri dish. So just to put it into context, a petri dish is a little plate. It just gives you an indication of scale, right? So that's at small scale, but to be able to get to the market, you need to scale that to probably maybe a 1,000-liter reactor, depending on the type of process. So they're very good at being able to demonstrate the concept there, but for a product to be feasible in the market, it needs to be cost effective and it needs to be able to be scaled. So the scaling of those processes takes a special set of skills. And these may not, I'm not saying it always isn't the case, but they may not be a skill set that is present within that particular entrepreneur. So what we do is through our networks, we put them in contact with mentors that have experience in that.
Amazing.
So they can guide them on how to navigate that particular hurdle in the product development cycle, so that they can make progress to getting it closer to the market. The other very important component of this is the business aspects. As you know, scientists very rarely have a business skill set unless they've gone deliberately and tried to develop that.
Yeah.
So that's where BioCiTi comes in play. Is we leverage on our network through the extensive experience that we have within the ecosystem, but also we leverage on Citi's 20 years of experience and networks associated with business. And so when a business comes into the BioCiTi ecosystem, we do an assessment and see what type of mentors would have a benefit for them, whether it's a technical, whether it's a business mentor. And then we put that business mentor in contact with them, and they work very closely to make sure that there's a clear timeline target to get to the market and all the requirements to string that chain together so that they can get to the market. And then essentially advise. So the mentors don't do it for the business. They advise and they guide. And the benefit of that is that you're getting extremely valuable advice from mentors that have done similar type of things in the past.
Sure.
So our mentors have experience in developing businesses. They've failed at certain businesses. They've succeeded at certain businesses. So they have a wealth of knowledge that they impart onto the entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur himself will do what is needed. So you're developing their skill set and not just doing it for them.
Amazing.
Yeah. So the other important aspect that we see entrepreneurs need is Techno-Economic Modeling. So it's important to, from a perspective when you start to looking for investment to grow your business, you have to demonstrate what is the long-term value creation of this business. So, in business term, they call it discounted cash flows, and you try to determine your internal rate of return and net present value. But it's a skill set that these businesses need to be able to develop pretty early in their business life cycle so that they can present to investors what the likelihood of a return is going to be. So it's becoming more and more apparent that businesses want that skill set, and our mentors that we align them with provide them with that necessary training and assistance.
Incredible. Amazing. Thank you. You touched on a very important thing, set of skills. So I'm interested in knowing, so what are the prerequisites? What is there a qualifying criteria that you have in place before you can take an entrepreneur as a tenant at BioCiTi? Because I'm thinking, I attended an ed tech event, and one of the main speakers asked all the techpreneurs to raise their hands, and he asked them, does any one of you have a background in education? And you find out majority don't have a background in education, but they have a background in tech. And you find these people are very eager and they're passionate, but this certain set of skills that they lack, which probably won't look good in front of investors. Do you find a challenge like that in biotech? And what are the requirements for an entrepreneur to actually qualify to be a tenant at BioCiTi?
So I am very reluctant to put boundaries to what an entrepreneur needs. Some of the best entrepreneurs in the world came with no educational background that justified.
True.
So it's not something that I put into a boundary. So our one criteria is that the business needs to be aligned to bioeconomy or biotechnology focus. Okay, that's the key criteria, because that's what we are. We specialize in that particular area. But when I say bioeconomy, it's actually quite a broad area. So I don't think that there's the need to put any limitations that you have to come with some kind of educational background. I'll give you an example. You might know of Mzansi Meats, right?
Mm-hmm. I know that very well.
Mzansi Meats is an extremely high-tech food biotech business. But the company was founded by a marketing person and a computer technologist and a finance person. None of them had any biotech background. But it is one of the most successful cultured meat companies at the moment in South Africa.
That is very interesting.
It's one of the businesses that has grown the most rapidly within the BioCiTi ecosystem. So just to give you an example, that you don't have to be a scientist to drive a science-based business. As long as you have a passion to do something, and that passion should not only be about making money. I always say money will happen, but your passion should be something a little bit more selfless.
I see.
And if you have a passion to make a difference, for example, in Zanzi's case, they want to move away from animal slaughter. It's got a deeper meaning. It's got a higher purpose.
Yeah,
it's not only about making money. It's not only about making money. And if you have that, and most of the businesses that we support, they have a purpose that they want to see value imparted to the country through various different means, and money is a side effect of that.
Wow. Okay, I hear that, and that's really profound. I think Mzansi Meat and another one, Novo Dairy, I think they BioCiTi Incubating, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? I hear you talking about the passion and a deeper meaning, and the need to want to make change. What would you say, if there's any entrepreneur out there looking? What would you say Mzansi Meat and Novo Dairy did that's so different that other startups could learn from?
So I think the two examples that you give is exceptional. I touched on Mzansi, but let me just touch a little bit on De Novo.
Yeah, please.
And both of them, I think they've ventured into an area which is, you would have heard of the term disruptive innovation.
No.
Okay. So disruptive innovation is essentially when you venture into an area that is going to disrupt something else.
Okay.
Okay. So in Zanzi's case, when they do succeed, they will disrupt normal animal husbandry on cattle farming, etc. De Novo Dairies, on the other hand, is looking at alternate milk proteins. So when they do develop, it's a new area, it's an emerging area. But when it does emerge, it's going to disrupt the normal dairy industry. So they have taken the bold steps of venturing into an area that typically will scare other people. Okay, because it's easy to go and venture into a business, what we call a Me Too business. Okay, it's a proven area, it's a proven technology. I just think I can do it as well and get a share of the market.
Yeah.
Here, they're creating a completely new market area, and it's a bold step that they've done. And I applaud both of them. Okay, De Novo, on the other hand, was founded by a scientist,
Okay.
But the co-founder is not a scientist. But what we see is that you need a mix to be able to navigate all the challenges of business. So yeah, they're working in areas that are very disruptive. Similarly, there's another company that we host in our lab. So you might know that we have a lab, but we also incubate businesses that don't necessarily use our labs.
Okay, how does that work?
So
the incubation part.
So business incubation expands outside of the lab. So businesses that don't need to use our lab, we still provide them with the support through the network, the access to our networks, etc., etc.
Okay.
So the other business that's within our labs at the moment is a company called Afrobodies. But yeah, again, it's founded by a scientist, and he's looking at a new cutting edge type of antibodies developed from a specialized, a specific animal called the alpaca. And those antibodies have specific benefits as opposed to typically other antibodies. And they as well, they're based in our labs and they're growing their business very, very quickly. So Dr. Peter Durkin, who's the CSO of that business, essentially runs a one-man show, but his business is growing so quickly that he's going to have to start scaling. And they're actively now sourcing funding. So if anybody's listening that is interested in funding them, please either contact me or I'll introduce you to Peter and let him do his 30-second pitch, and hopefully you can help grow that business.
Incredible, Deepak. Wow. So I'm thinking how. So what I want to ask is, you have incubators that use your lab and some that don't. How what's in it for you? How do you guys? I know BioCiTi does not take any equity or share in any intellectual property. You basically don't benefit there. Like, in case people don't know, if you go to a university, that would be the opposite, right? So how do you sustain the lab financially? I mean, you probably need money to service those expensive equipment, and I'm trying to understand how does BioCiTi survive?
Okay. So our income model has got various different, what I would call, product sets to it. Okay, the primary and the main source of our income is through a government grant from CEDA, which is a small enterprise development agency.
Shout out to CEDA.
So they contribute a fair portion that covers our incubation costs, which covers largely some baseline costs associated with salaries associated with the incubator, and then the actual running costs of the incubator associated with paying the mentors, etc.
Okay.
And to enable events. So that's one portion of it. With regards to the lab, so we have another product set, which is access to the lab. So it's on a rental basis. So any scientist or business that wants to use the lab, they pay a rental on a monthly basis, and they have full access to our equipment. And that's based on the equipment that we have currently. So as long as you're not doing anything illegal, you have access to our lab and you can use all of the equipment. Okay. And we have Dr. Anesu Moyo, who's our laboratory manager, and he provides them with ad hoc support regarding how to use the equipment, some guidance from a technical perspective, etc. Okay, and so the income that we get from the rental, to a large extent, covers the running costs of the lab, servicing of the equipment, etc. Then we have other product sets that, for example, an aspect of contract research. Now, I think what you need to understand is that BioCiTi is a non-profit company, and we design specifically as an enabler to create business and to get these businesses into the market. So everything that we do is designed to help a small business make that step change. So our contract research offering is something that we leverage on the science skills that sits with Anesu and myself, and we try to offer that to businesses that might not have those skills. So, for example, if a business needs to do a specific set of work from an R&D perspective, or even if it's development or quality control, etc., we offer at a reduced cost a pricing for that particular component. Okay? So typically, if they have to get that done somewhere else, like a university, they will have to give equity away. The cost might be a little bit more higher. Other contract research organizations, like science councils, etc., their costs are significantly higher. And I come from those environments. The hourly rates are quite high. Wow. So we leverage on the fact that we have certain aspects of sunk costs so that we can provide this at an affordable cost to the business, and ultimately that allows the business to make progress towards getting to the next stage. Amazing. So these are the various product sets, and we're evolving this continuously. We're also looking at consultancies. So, for example, if a particular business needs to develop a business plan and they don't have the capacity to do it, it's something that we would consider doing. So, in an environment in which we operate, where, as I mentioned, we are a non-profit company, our key goals are for social good. It's for economic growth. Funding is always a challenge in this area. So, we try to target various organizations, philanthropic organizations that see benefit in what we're doing because it's largely social good. So our product mix comes in with grant funding, and then through income based on our rental models and our contract research offerings, etc. But we're always looking for new investors. We're always looking for support to enable us to expand our reach of this incubation program. So just to give you some numbers, currently I think we signed on our 36th business that we're incubating. We've enabled, BioCiTi has been around from 2019 as an incubator, and we've enabled businesses' collective growth to go from, I think it was 1.5 million collectively in 2019 to over 30 million currently.
Wow.
So it shows
that's amazing.
We're making the necessary impact. We've created over 100 jobs, both direct and indirect combined. So we're making that impact, but we can do a lot more if we're able to scale the program. And the scalability of the program is highly dependent on the funding that we receive.
Okay, so do you think funding is the biggest challenge that the biotech sector is facing, or are there other technical hurdles that are in place, or maybe reach? Because I'm thinking, do not think the biotech sector is well known in rural areas and townships, and I feel like that's another challenge, because there's so much potential in those spaces. Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
Yeah, and I think so. Just to answer the first part, yes, I do believe funding is the biggest concern. In South Africa, I think we have only one specialized biotech venture fund, which is One Bio. So to get investment in business is difficult because of the limitations, but also to get investment in organizations that enable business like BioCiTi is also difficult. So if that could be navigated effectively, a lot of the other hurdles will fall down. So funding is a major component. Then to answer the second part of your question around, or your comment around rural interventions in biotech. So biotech has got a mixture of high and low tech. And I think generally people assume that biotech is all high tech.
Yeah, that's what I think.
So I'll give you a low tech example of a bioeconomy business. We all know about moringa.
Yes.
Okay? Yes. So making a moringa tea bag, for example. So growing the plant, drying it, crushing it, putting it into a tea bag is a biotech process. Okay. So it's just that people don't associate it with it.
Is it low tech though?
It's low tech.
It's low tech. Okay.
But the benefits that is imparted from there is where the science comes from. Okay. So what and the benefits or the application of that moringa and the benefits it imparts to the body is the high tech component, but it doesn't necessarily it's high tech in the background. Okay, but the process itself is just crushing and making a tea bag.
Interesting.
But it's similarly with various other technologies. So a lot of traditional knowledge is born from a biotech background. And during my time at CSR, I actually ran a research group that did a lot of work in traditional medicines and complementary medicines. But it's basically taking a biological resource, which is a plant, and applying it into application for human health, cosmetics, etc. So we have some businesses that we do support that do cosmetics from natural products. For example, African Secrets, which is one of the businesses that we support, and then SK Botanicals, both of which use natural plant material to develop cosmetics.
Wow, absolutely amazing. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Deepak. Folks, you heard it from the expert himself. I hope you learned something today. Special announcement, Mzansi Meat has launched Africa's first lab-grown beef burger. This is an exciting development, not only for BioCiTi and Mzansi Meat, but for South Africa and the entire continent. We're looking forward to future advancements from BioCiTi and the biotech sector.